And just to recap, we're talking about fire preparedness, emergency evacuation with our horses. We're talking about you need to get your horses comfortable with trailer loading before you actually need them to load. So many of us make the mistake of trying to load our horses in an emergency situation, or we're getting to a show, or we're going to a clinic, or we're going to the vet. We don't leave enough time. We're in a hurry, and it's not good for our horses. Our horses feel that energy and they feed off of it. So practice, 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 practice. I play with trailer loading with my horses all the time. I just did a groundwork clinic this weekend, and every opportunity that I have, I pretend like I'm loading the horse in the trailer. So sending the horse between me and the fence, sending the horse over a bridge, sending a horse over a tarp, sending a horse through an alleyway. All of that is like trailer loading. So the more that you practice, the better your horse is going to be ready. Slat loads, stock trailers, your horses need to know how to do that in all trailers. Loading with multiple horses, loading with horses they don't know. That's all things that you need to know. 2 years ago, we had a fire here just not too far from our property on our side of the mountain. And for those of you that don't know where I live up against a mountain that is covered. We are surrounded by sagebrush. We have done our best to make our defensible space here, but the fire started. I was working with my young apprentice and her grandmother were here, and we put a horse down in the pasture, came up to get some water, saw some smoke. I wondered if it looked like a fire. By the time we went in and got water, came back out, it was growing. That cloud was growing rapidly. I immediately jumped in my car, went over and looked. It was a fire that was raging, and the wind was in our favor, going against us, but at any moment it could have shifted. I was on the phone calling everybody I knew. I was gathering horses. I have wild horses. I have domestic horses. I was gathering all of my horses that were domestic and would load easily, and getting all their halters ready, getting them up where it would be easy to load so that when all my friends showed up, they could load. Thank goodness my neighbor who lives in the valley side, which is all irrigated, called me and said, hey, bring them over here. So I was able to get all of them out except for my 4 wild ones. And I was then on the phone calling my wild Mustang friends saying, hey, I might have to load up these wild horses in a hurry. And luckily I've done a lot of that, but you know, that's not good enough. You know, I realized that if that fire were to turn in a hurry, I would have to figure out on cutting those horses loose. So I have made arrangements with the neighbor across the street that we could quickly put up some panels across the highway, which we live on not a highway, but it's 45 miles per hour. It's fast. We would put up portable panels and drive those horses down my dirt road into their yard and into their pastures, where they would at least be protected from the fire. My horses all wear these really cool bands that go around their leg. They're made by Equestrian Safe. Teresa Spencer, she makes these. I love them because they are double Velcro. They go on like this and like that. Sorry guys, I still get self-conscious at looking at my missing finger. So they go around the fetlocks like that. And for my wild pastures, I do have in each pasture a horse that I can get these on. All of my other horses wear them this time of the year in their pasture constantly, so that if I'm out of town, we're getting ready to leave tomorrow to go to Idaho for Father's Day weekend to spend with our family. And I need to know that I have my horses with their bands on them before I leave. I have a pet sitter who's coming, and I need to know that it's going to be easier for her than, you know, in case anything happens. So the other thing that we do here and I learned this when I was studying horsemanship, and I've made it a practice, and I teach all my students as well, is all of my halters are hung in one specific place. They are all hung up in a specific way, so that in case there is an emergency, I can grab 10 halters at one time, and I can start heading down towards the pasture. And I've got them all over my arm, and I'm taking one off, ready to catch a horse. Another thing we practiced when I was studying natural horsemanship and in Colorado for weeks at a time, another thing that we would practice is fire drills. We would have contests on how many halters can you grab and how many horses can you get out of a pasture and lead at one time. Now, this is a great thing to practice if you have more than one horse, or if you're at a boarding facility. I would encourage you to make sure that that boarding facility staff is trained for an emergency. I wish Kristen were here so she could share with us what her emergency evacuation plan is, because I know she has one. So what we would do is we would go out to that pasture, and we would catch as many horses as we can, and we would halter them and lead them to one specific area. We practice. We got super good and comfortable and handy at grabbing those halters, catching those horses, leading. I think the most I led at one time was 8. And that takes a lot of confidence and groundedness, and it takes a lot for 8 horses to be led together. So if you have multiple horses, I would encourage you, lead them all together from time to time, from their pastures to the turnout, or just in the pastures, or if they're all in stalls, lead them around the property. If you board at a facility, talk to the facility owner and ask them, what is your emergency evacuation plan, and can we practice? Can we practice that plan to make sure that all of these horses are comfortable being led together and comfortable loading? The other thing is, you want to make sure that if you're evacuating your horse, take whatever prescriptions they're on and grab some hay, and make sure that you grab a bucket, so that wherever they end up, they're going to be cared for a short period of time. Now, if you don't have one of these bands, or you don't have a way to identify your horse, microchipping is great. It's wonderful, but not everybody has microchip scanners, and not all of the evacuation centers have the ability to scan a horse. So that is great if a horse shows up missing and somebody finds it, and animal control, usually all animal control officers around the United States have scanners, so they can scan your horse, but make sure your horse is registered with the microchip registry, or it does no good. Have grease sticks, grease crayons. You can get them at any livestock store. Just have them handy in your tack room, so that you can run out there and paint your phone number on your horse's rump or on their side. Do not, if you are not able to get your horses off the property, do not lock them in their barn. Do not lock them in their stalls. Turn them loose. Make sure you shut the barn and shut their stalls, because they will try to go back to where they feel safe. If you have to leave your horses in the pasture, you can't get them out. Make sure you open the gates to the pastures and cut the fence line in the corners. When horses are covered in smoke and they can't see, they will travel the fence line. Now, it's really scary to think about turning your horse loose. absolutely terrifying. But it's better than having them confined to a pasture or to a pen and have them not be able to get out. And do not leave your halters on horses, you guys. It's a bad practice. It's so dangerous for them. So many freaky accidents happen especially if you're trying to evacuate horses and the fire's coming faster than you can get those horses loaded and get out of there. Take those halters off. Please take those halters off, because you do not know where they're going to go, and you don't know how long they're going to be out there, and you do not want them to get stuck on debris or anything. So please, 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 please take their halters off. So for those of you who keep your horses on the property, I know Kristen and I have talked about this before, and she told me that the fire department knows how many horses she has on the property. And that is so important. Our veterinary practice, my husband and I own a small animal practice, and we actually hand out complimentary stickers that go on the client's window that says, in case of emergency, fire department, we have cats, dogs, birds, and you fill in the number that you have. So if you have your horses at home or you board them at a facility, make sure that there is a post, it's posted somewhere that, hey Kristen, it's posted somewhere how many horses, goats, cows, sheep, chickens, cats, dogs, how many are on that property. Because if the fire department can see easily how many animals are on your property, they will do their best, and I say their best, without jeopardizing their lives, to save your animals. But if you don't put a notice somewhere that's super visible that says how many animals are on that property, they're not going to know. So let's say hypothetically, okay, we'll use my house for example. I have 13 horses on the property. I have 4 cats, 2 birds, 3 dogs in the house, and 2 wild cats. So I'm going to put a notice right like around my front door and my barn that says exactly what we have, so that in the event that they can do something about it, they will know what they're trying to say. Hey, Kristen, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good now that my internet's back up. We have a really wonderful guy that's been helping us with our internet, and I guess he had to replace some parts earlier today. So, and my phone, once it gets past the number of gigabytes that we paid for, it gets painfully slow. It connects, disconnects. Oh God. It's, it's technology. So it's all good.
It's all good. Even when it's not.
It's gotta be,
Yep. So I've just shared the nifty bands that can go on ankles from EquestriSafe. They also have throat latch, same kind of deal. I was also sharing, your horses need to know how to trailer load. Don't wait. Make sure they know how to get into slant loads and straight loads. Make sure they're comfortable loading with horses they don't know. Make sure you have your halters in a designated area. Make sure you put all your halters away the same way. I was sharing with everybody that I have mine in a designated area, and I can grab 10 halters and head for the pasture and halter up 10 horses. Also to make sure that you can lead multiple horses at a time. It's not something we do on a regular basis. It's not something our horses have done on a regular basis. But in an emergency, you need to be able to do that.
Yeah. One of the things we have in our barn here too is we have a big board with all of the horses' names, the owner's names, the owner's phone number, and a description of the horse. And so I've instructed my people, if somebody's here or the same thing would go in a call for the firefighters, is to go up to the board and take a picture of the board. Because one of the things that happens is if you're not there for, if you're not there when the horses are evacuated, a lot of times people don't know where their horse went, right? And if you don't have those bands on, that could be a real problem, right? So, you know, it's not a great description, but it's something. So they can say, well, how many horses were there that we took from this one location, you know, that were bay with a snip? Well, it might narrow it down to at least 2 or 3, too. So that for us was something that became really important after the Washoe fire, because I knew several people that just didn't even know where their horse went. And I'm sure, you know, Cindy probably talked about that earlier. And it just, you know, for a big place, that's pretty important. Now, another thing too is I've also told my people, you know, if you don't keep your trailer at the place where your horse is, let's say you're boarding, like she said, make sure that your horse can get in any type of trailer. And sometimes I'll just park mine out there and hooked up to my truck and just say, tell people to load in, get them in there, get them out. Let's see what they do, because it's going to be a heck of a lot easier for me if that's not a problem. Now, also big facilities, if you're at a big place, or if you're, you know, somewhere that you think can take you a long time to evacuate, like more than an hour, like it would take us, make sure that your fire department knows about you, right? Because they'll start calling the places ahead of time that they know need more time.
Perfect.
You know, and err on the caution of telling them, hey guys, we got a fire, you know, a couple 100 acres over, and the wind's high, fire danger's high, you know, you might want to think about getting out, or getting things out ready to get out, right? So they know.
Hope we lost your sound. There we go.
Because we're not like a house, you know, we have 60 something horses here, and as much as I'd like to say that I have a trailer for every one of them, I don't. So
you know, you guys, it's great to reach out. If you're boarding your horse, ask your facility, do they know where the evacuation center is? Most counties have a designated evacuation center. Now, in the event that the fire is over there, then that will change. But if the more that you can be prepared, call the fire department and ask them, call animal control probably would be able to answer that as well. Find out where it is so that you know in advance. If you're part of the evacuation team, you know where you're going. If you're not, if it's your horse, you'll know where your horse is going. You need to, oh man, I had another really good point to make. It was on the lines, it was along the lines of trailers. You know, Kristen said, if you don't keep your trailer at your facility, then make sure your horse is going to be able to load in other trailers. But think about this, if your facility has room for your trailer, why not leave it there? Because if you're out of town, your trailer could be hooked up to somebody else's truck. And that's going to be a trailer that's going to make that much easier to get all those horses out. So that's really important. The other thing that is super important is, in the event of an evacuation, you need to carry your horse's paperwork with you. So say you're evacuating your horse, have it in your glove box. If your horse is at a boarding facility, they're going to evacuate that horse. But when you go to claim that horse, you're going to need to prove that it's your horse. So be sure that you take your paperwork. If you don't have a brand inspection, often the bill of sale will be enough. But try to get your horse brand inspected. Why not? You know?
Yeah.
We talked about cutting fence lines. We talked about if you have to leave them on the property, close your barns, close your pens, close your shelters. Don't, because they will run back inside.
Yeah.
What else might you add?
Another good thing to think about is teaching. Sorry, one of my little kids came in like, "Is my father in here?" I'm like, "No." Sorry, guys. um, uh, sorry, is asking yourself if you know how to put on a blindfold too, because that can be something really helpful to put on your horse if your horse is really terrified, if the fire is where you are at, right? Sometimes, depending on your barn situation, you might have to lead them through some stuff that's pretty scary. I had that one year, the grapevine was burning, and I was coming up over the grapevine with my truck and trailer, and my truck broke down right next to the fire. Because they hadn't closed the grapevine. And so I had some friends behind me in trailer, and you could imagine how scary that was for my horse to have to actually there was 3 of them in that trailer, to have to unload them on the side of Highway 5 next to a fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to go ahead and put a blindfold on just because I thought I had so much to lose, right? I don't really want to test how good my training was at that point in that situation, because the cost was too high. And they were good with it. They were fine with me putting stuff on their face. So that's something you kind of want to make sure that your horse is good at, right? Putting something on their face.
And in large animal emergency rescues, when we're having to blindfold horses, we carry around a bunch of bras.
Yeah.
And the bras work beautiful. The straps go over the ears, the clip, the snap, the back goes right underneath their throat latch. You can hook it onto their halter underneath there. And it's, not up against their eyes because of the cups of the bra. And they work really, really well. We've actually even had on emergency rescues, there's been a number of us women that have pulled off our bras and donated them to the cause just to make sure that everybody could be blindfolded. So, but yeah, Kristen's right. Do it in advance, because it's scary. 1, it's scary for the horse in the emergency. 2, now he's got his eyes blindfolded. And 3, now you're asking him to walk. That's pretty scary.
Yeah. So that's definitely for me, something to think about. And just with the blindfolding, and and if you're at a big boarding facility, not only ask them what where the evacuation centers are, if they know it, ask them what their plan is. Right? So make sure they know what their plan is.
Yeah, I had mentioned that earlier, to make sure that they have a plan. Make sure that their team has practiced the plan. And if you want to be able to be a part of that team, because Lord knows if you can help and you are available and willing, your team, the facilities people should be practicing. They should be able to go and halter up number of horses and lead those horses and know where everything's at and know where the trailers, know how to hook up the trailers. Not everybody thinks about training their employees how to hook up a trailer, how to back up a trailer. When we were training for our large animal emergency rescue, we could not qualify for the team until we could adequately back up a horse trailer.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to be able to pull it out, back it up. So if you're boarding out a facility, share with your facility owner, ask them, what is their plan? Where are their emergency numbers? Do they know where the evacuation centers are? Have they talked to the fire department? Does the staff know how to, walk multiple horses at a time? Do they know how to hook up the trailer? All that stuff. All of that stuff is so, so important. Before you hook up the trailer, throw a bunch of bales of hay in some of those trucks, because you don't know where they're going. So you want to make sure, especially those that are on a special diet, throw them in the back.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I think sometimes people have a tendency to think it's never going to happen to them.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also some people that think because you're being prepared that you're a panicker, right? And I know I've had some people look at me like that around here, when we get flooding in the wintertime. And I'm like, okay, make sure you have enough bags made for me. Make sure, I can give your horses medications. Make sure you tell me what the medications are right now, and they're like, oh, I'm always going to be able to get here. And I'm like, well, not really. You don't always know that, right? I mean, I wasn't here in 2000, but I didn't have to be for people to tell me, what it was like, right? People really weren't going anywhere. And so, I always tell my owners here, I said, okay, so if something happens, make up a couple extra bags of your horse's medications or write it down somewhere, right? If you have a horse that, needs something, write it down. So it's easy for me, right? Or show it to me at some point in time, spend, 5 minutes, and don't always assume that you can get here to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't know, right? You just don't know. There could be a fire in between here and where you live, right? And they close the road. I mean, you just don't know. It's, what is it? Prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Right.
Yep, I was
And
sharing at the beginning of the video 3 years ago now, I guess. 2 years ago. 3 years ago. 2 years ago, when we had that fire just over the corner from us on the same side of the street, and what I did to get ready for that. And I was ready to go should the wind shift. Actually, not only was I ready to go, because my neighbor called and said, bring your horses over here, I took all my domestics over there and said, I'll pick them up in the morning. Because then that way, all I had to do was worry about loading my 4 wild ones or cutting them loose. But that wasn't all. I had cats and dogs and birds and a veterinary practice that we operate out of the home. So I had all that, take the computer, forget the files. We've got everybody on computer. I mean, you don't want to be caught unprepared. And remember, when we were in school, we practiced fire drills. There was a reason for that. And we were kids, and we know how scary that was, right? So we're talking about 1,200, 1,500 pound animals that don't understand. So practice with them. Practice.
Yeah, and they'll see the energy rise, right? And that also gets back to as well, they're going to be spending the night somewhere else, right? Make sure it hasn't been a year or two since they've left your property.
Or never.
Right. Get them in the trailer, drive them around, make them spend the night somewhere, help them get through it. So that's a big one too. Yeah.
Another thing that's important, if you have the opportunity, is have other people halter your horses and take them out and put them in the trailer.
Oh, you are in here.
So many.
What is that?
Sorry. That's another kid. Sorry, guys.
What are you doing? So, so many horses are used to you, and nobody else halters them and moves them out. And I see it, you know, when I pick up, when I'm working with one of my clients and they hand me the halter and lead rope of their horse, and the horse looks at them and looks at me like, whoa, wait a minute, you know? So
That's true.
have people go in, you know, it's not a bad idea. If you're at a boarding facility, see if the owner of your facility will do a practice fire drill like once a quarter where you all come out. You can make it a potluck. You can make it fun. And everybody has to grab somebody else's horse. And everybody has to load that horse into 2 different kinds of trailers. And you can even time it, you know, after everybody shows that they can do it well, then you can time it. Have fun with it. Because the more that it becomes muscle memory for you and your horses, practice bras, have a bra donation day. So in the barn, there's the bucket of bras. You know, that's part of the kit that you grab if there's an emergency. So everybody can get a bra blindfold if they need it. You know, it doesn't have to be this scary, dreaded thing. You can make it a fun play day preparedness thing. And then we talked about the grease crayons.
Oh, yeah.
Their phone numbers on the horses.
Nail polish works too, like red nail polish sometimes on their feet, depending on what color the horse has.
If you can get it on there quick enough. You know, sometimes in an emergency situation, the last thing a horse wants you is around their feet. I know when we do it, when I have participated in large animal evacuations, we use the grease crayons because it can go right on their flanks, you know, right on their rumps on both sides, or right across their barrel on both sides in big numbers. If it's a stallion, we'll put a big fat S on their ass. You know, when they get to evacuation center, it's a pretty amazing thing to see if you've got a well-oiled team there. You know, they have some of these collars that are multiple colors, and they'll get them, they're all color coded. So it's either by district that they've been pulled, it's by pins. I mean, it's pretty fascinating. So the more that we can be prepared for this, you guys, the better. And this is the time of the year. And I think all of us, all of our members here, we're all in fire country.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much everywhere can burn. So whether or not you know, I mean, Arizona's burning right now in Tucson. They've been burning for 2 weeks. I know.
Now, I don't know if you guys remember this, but when when we were having the hay talk, Kristen, or was it was you, talking about the degree of moisture in the hay and where it's stored, and when it gets heated up, it can combust.
Oh, that's true. Yep.
So,
and that's more prevalent in the South because they have mold problems back there. So they get too much water in their hay and it becomes an issue. So,
so
that's an issue.
It can happen. Faulty wiring, you know. We, on the Large Animal Rescue page that I follow, right now is the time of the year that all these barns are bringing out their fans. And turning on their fans. So are the plugs good? Is the area around the outlets clean? Have the fans been taking a vacuum or a blower, you know, an air compressor blower to blow all that dust out of them? Those things, barn fires, you guys, happen so frequently from faulty wiring. So, and that's a year round, really. I mean, we see more facilities right now bringing out their fans, but really faulty wiring is year round. Barn.
Yep. Well, we got shavings in the stall, right? And one spark, and that's going up.
Yep.
You know, and you know, I don't know if you talked about this earlier or not, but when we first bought our place, the paddocks on the outside of the stalls actually didn't have gates on them.
Oh,
Yeah, and so we cut off the end of the stalls and put gates on the outside because we didn't want to have to lead our horses through the middle of the barn
right.
in a fire, right? And make sure that your barn, I know they're kind of annoying, has GFIs, right? Those can really help. I say they're annoying because they trip all the time, but they're there to do that, right? To try to stop an electrical fire. So, you know, make sure that, you know, all your stuff is up to current code.
Mhm.
You know, that barn, when we got it, didn't have GFIs. We replaced all the electrical in it, redid it all so that, you know, things would trip.
Yeah.
And in the wintertime here, you know, we heat our waterers, right? And one of the things that can happen here is you gotta, when you're cleaning out our Nelson water, or especially, a lot of times the horses will dip their hay in it. Well, sometimes the hay will go underneath the bowl, kind of stacks up and goes on the side and gets right next to that heating element.
Yep.
Well, you know, that's really dangerous.
Yep.
So for us, we have a very clear schedule, and we make sure that the waters at least get dismantled to that degree about once a week, once to twice a week. And we pull everything out, look inside, pull everything out inside, and we have a rotating schedule for that. So yeah, so that's important too. Look at all your heating elements in your watering trough. Ask yourself what your wiring looks like. Did birds get to the wiring? We actually had do you excuse me, gosh, I'm stuttering. What kind of fire extinguishers do you have? Right? Do you have fire extinguishers that are good for a water fire, electrical fire? I mean, there's all different grades of fire extinguishers. Where are they located around the property? You know, we had a situation last year, and fortunately, we have inside of our tractors, not the one that just stays in the indoor, but not the one that stays in the indoor, but the ones that go out in our field. We always have fire extinguishers inside of them. So last year, my dad had taken our bobcat out into the field, and he used it one day, and it was great. Parked it over there overnight, and came back the next day, and the engine compartment was smoking.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. Well, what had happened when he turned it on overnight, a bird had gone inside of the engine and built a nest. Right? And thank God he had a fire extinguisher, or we would have lost our whole bobcat. And gosh knows where that would have ended, right? The fuel had gone up. There's quite a bit of fuel in there. It's, you know, could have been a disaster. So,
Make sure
you
your
know,
fire extinguishers are serviced regularly,
yeah.
because it doesn't do you any good to have a fire extinguisher that was serviced 4 years ago. It's not
Right.
it's not going to
Right.
it's not going to serve you. You're going to have false security there. We have fire extinguishers here, and we have them on our mobile clinic, and we by law, our veterinary practice has to have our fire extinguishers serviced every year. Our insurance company will not, should we have a fire and we cannot prove that those were being serviced every year, they won't cover the fire. So make sure that your fire extinguishers are serviced regularly.
Mm-hmm.
It's super easy to do. They come out, they take care of them. It's not expensive, and important.
Yeah. And I know this one probably sounds obvious, and I know you guys might have covered it, but make sure that your property, your gate on your property is easily accessible for the firefighters, right? So for example, for us on our electric gate, we have a box right next to it that says fire, and it's a universal key that all the fire departments have for people that have electric gates, and they put the key in, and it's a button. They push the button and they can get in. Because if I'm not here, you know, let's just say my neighbor calls and says, oh my gosh, your field's on fire, right? Well, they might get there before me. So make sure that there's a way that doesn't have to slow them down where they can access your property. Yeah, because I mean, they can use bolt cutters and they can do all that other stuff to get in, but you really want sometimes the fact, you know, time is of the essence, right? How quickly can they get there and how quickly can they do their job?
A
And
few minutes can make a difference.
And if you're designing a place, design it so that it's easy for those big trucks to get in, right? Don't put in a super narrow driveway with really narrow hairpin turns. Put in something that's big enough for those guys to get in and be able to drive exactly to wherever they need to be, right? You know, that's, you know, it just makes sense. You know, for us, when we were designing this place, that was important for us to put in really wide, big turns, you know, nice entry.
We lost your
But
sound.
that we can get emergency vehicles in, right? And we've had, you know, unfortunately, we have had some accidents here, horseback riding wise, and sometimes the fire department's the first one to show up, right, before the paramedics. So that's something to think about if you're building a place, right? So, yeah.
I can't think of anything else. Can you, Kristen?
I can't. So
you guys, hopefully this has value. It's super, super important. It's important enough. I know that this is our private group live talk, but I think it's important enough we might actually make it a public video.
yeah.
So everybody who doesn't think about these things can view this. So
Yeah, I'm even wondering if we could invite our local fire department chief to come out and talk.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. You know, what goes on their end too.
Maybe we could get our mutual friend's husband to.
I was just wondering after I said that, like, he knows horses. So.
Yeah. I don't know if he would be comfortable public speaking, but I think he public speaks anyway, so it's worth a try.
Right.
Can't hurt.
Way to put him on the spot.
Right? All right, everybody. We will be, well, actually, I'm leaving town tomorrow morning, so I don't know that I will be available for tomorrow night's live. Are you going to solo, Kristen, or should we bump it out a week?
I think I can solo. So
okay,
I'll be
cool.
good. Yeah.
Cool.
Yay.
All righty. So we will, for those of you who want to join us tomorrow night on our Thursday night live at 6. Why do I 6:15, right?
Yeah, 6:15. Yeah.
All of a sudden I was like, why did we go 6:15?
It's because I teach until 6. So it gives me 15 minutes. I'm like, I can organize myself a little.
And who knows, I may try and bump in on my cell phone as we're driving to Idaho. It might be sketchy, but I might try. And until then, we will see you guys next Wednesday at 4 o'clock. And thanks for tuning in. And I'm glad that you made it, Kristen.
Thank you. Me too. I was like, gosh, I just hate not being accountable. I'm like, this is killing me. God's really testing me this week, I swear.
It happens, especially as summer starts rolling, things get busy.
Yeah.
All right. We will talk to you soon, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.